Hello, I'm Dr. Malcolm Ogborn, the Optimistic Doc. Today, I'd like to make a few brief comments on the subject of power and influence. When I talk about power, there are a couple of ways of looking at it. The classical way comes from physics, where it is very clearly defined as the rate work is done. So that's work divided by time. Something that's more powerful does more work in the same time, or does the same work in less time. In life, it seems to be more broadly characterized as the ability to get things done. Essentially, as one of my fictitious heroes would have it, the ability to make it so. Power and authority are often terms that are used interchangeably, but they're not the same. One needs power to wield authority. What's the point of having authority if you have no leverage to get people to do your bidding or to get systems to move in the direction you wish them to move? But by the same token, one can effectively wield power having no authority at all. And that's something we're going to explore in a little bit more depth. When I talk about power, the model that I like to think of, particularly as I work as an organizational coach, and so usually I'm talking about power being used in the context of organizations, comes from actually quite an old model from a pair of sociologists, Raven and French, who first published a model in 1959. There's been a number of modifications to it since, but basically it stands the test of time. In their model, there are three types of positional power. Power that you can wield just because of the position you're in, not necessarily who you are or any personal properties that you bring to the equation. The first is coercive power, the power to punish. So, do what I say or you're fired. The next is reward power. Do what I say and I'll reward you. I'll pay you, I'll give you compliments, anything along that line. The third is legitimate power. Do what I say because I'm the boss. I have the right to tell you what to do. The other group of power, however, is personal power. This includes referent power, which is the power that you wield influence because people like you or admire you or you have a following. Information power. You manage a situation or you try to achieve change or get things done by providing information that is persuasive and will get people to take action that aligns with your interests. And the third, which is perhaps a variation on information power, is expert power, where you are the go-to, the guru, the person who is respected in this field. And people will tend to follow your recommendations simply because of the level of respect for your abilities in that specific field. So why make the distinction? Well, positional power gets stuff done. It doesn't really depend on having a personal relationship or a level of trust or respect. Generally, the drive for people to do your bidding comes from your position and the realities of the situation. The downside is that if you haven't really changed any focus in the system or any motivation of people, once you stop applying your power, the system will tend to go back to the way it was before. It is, however, appropriate for immediate and urgent tasks. If you want to clear a burning building, giving out pamphlets on the adverse effects of fire is probably not the best strategy. Personal power, however, requires some level of trust and confidence, and its outcome tends to be less certain. It primarily achieves results not by directing the action, but by changing the motivation of people. They do what you want because they choose to do it, because they want to do it. Because of that, it comes with higher risks, but also because you're achieving more significant change at a motivational level, it tends to come with bigger rewards. And if you're really trying to change a complex system, and many people working in healthcare, my primary area of operations, spend a lot of their lives doing this, you have to use personal power. The level of change you require needs a shift in motivation of the players involved, or it will never stick. So let's talk now about influence, which is slightly different from power. Influence is the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. And power is a form of influence, but influence involves more than that. Sometimes when you're influencing a situation, you may have no power over it at all. The model that I like to apply and coach from is a slightly complex one, and it comes from the Vital Smarts organization, and it's called Influencer. But it basically looks at a matrix which looks at factors of motivation as to how you get people motivated to do whatever it is you're trying to get changed, and generally when you're wielding influence you are trying to get a change. And the second dimension is ability. What is needed to get the job done? And the other side of the matrix for this is at the personal level, at the social level, and at the structural level. So if we take these one at a time and look at personal motivation, make the undesirable desirable. What this is saying is the first step you have to take is look at whatever it is that you want to achieve, and how do you align this with the population that you're seeking to influence in such a way as that they're going to want what you want. On the personal level too, you have to look at ability, and you need to surpass limits. And this isn't necessarily your personal limits, although that may come into play, but can the people that you're asking to do something actually do it? I mean, do they have the capability to do what you need to do? Do they have the skills? Do they have the knowledge? If not, part of your strategy of influence is going to have to deal with those issues and have a tactic in place to ensure that those questions are answered. At the social level, I mean, this is where you're dealing not so much with individuals, but dealing with identified groups within society. You need to harness peer pressure. So who are the champions? Who are the people who are going to be natural allies for your influence and change? How do you identify them and engage with them and then recruit them to the cause? And then having done that, how do you organize that so that the growing mass of people you've aligned become a strength? What can you generate from the group that you can't generate from individuals? The group greater than the sum of its parts. And finally, the structural. Ultimately, if you want people to stay on board, whilst there are going to be some enthusiastic champions who are intrinsically motivated just because it's a good or right thing to do, at some point to bring the majority along, there's got to be something in it for them. And so you have to think in terms of your influence strategy and change, where will the system reward behavior, and how will it ensure that people keep doing what you need them to do to make the change that you want to achieve with your influence stick. Finally, you need to look at the environment which your change is going to happen. Is it ready? Does it have the right facilities? Does it have the right equipment? Are the right software programs in place? Is the right legislative framework in place? All of these are things that are structural, which can make or break a change that you may seek to achieve through influence. Being successful in influence, it's important to have a plan, and this, I find, is a good model to lay out planning to achieve an influence strategy. If you want to know a little bit more about this, on the subject of power, there's actually been a recent publication, which is a review of the Raven and French model in the context of medical leadership in the BMJ Leader. The Influencer model can be found in the Influencer book and the Influencer online and in-person courses. I would recommend, if you find that a little bit top-heavy for your influence project, you may want to have a look at the web link on this slide, which looks at a simpler model of influence that perhaps is a little more applicable if you want to start small and perhaps just work with individuals rather than large systems or organizations. If you want to know more about the Optimistic Doc coaching services, please feel free to contact me via the website, by email, or at the telephone number indicated. Thank you for listening.